When you control a man thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. You don't have to tell him to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and stay in it. You don't need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there's no back door, he will cut one for his own special benefit. His education makes it necessary. And that's why we thought it was necessary that we start this podcast, Man-Made Men. This is where we will be interviewing extraordinary men that's doing extraordinary things throughout their community, their life, their family, with love, care, and passion. So join us as we embark on this journey of finding men all across America that's doing extraordinary things on Man-Made Men. Let's get it started.
I have some pushback on that.
You probably won't invite me back after this, but it's okay. We are the largest millionaires per capita in this country as Black people.
When the casket closes, what do you want to be remembered by and known for?
So that is, I don't fear much in life, but that is a big one for me.
Welcome to Man-Made Media. This is our first episode of Man-Made Men. This is where we're bringing in men of success, status, family, and character, and we sit down and have a conversation with them about their life and their lifestyle. And we have our first guest, Mr. Aaron Taylor.
Thank you very much for having me.
This first episode is brought to you by One Call Financial, located in Wellington Mall. So make sure you come over here for all your financial services need. If you need accounting, if you have a property that you need to have rented and listed for you, and you don't want to have to do any of the work, make sure you reach out to them. That's where we're shooting this from right now. And I'm going to move on over to our friend, Mr. CB Smith, to have a conversation on who we are interviewing today on Man-Made Men. CB?
Listen, guys, I am super stoked and super excited about today's show. Again, I am CB Smith. Really quick, I am a South Florida native. I was born in Pahokee. I was raised in between Belglade and Royal Palm. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because the young man that we're interviewing today, he has made an impact in each and every one of these areas in our county. He has businesses in Belglade. He owns property in Belglade and Pahokee. He also has his urban development business. I'm really excited about the opportunity to interview my friend, Mr. Aaron Taylor.
Thank you, guys. I'm truly honored to be here and looking forward to an interesting interview. And hopefully this is the first of many to come. So let's get into it, man. Whatever you guys want to know, I'm here.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. First, who is Aaron Taylor?
Man, that's a loaded question. You got to ask me, give me a time period when I was young, college, now, because those are very different men. If you want a little bit of background, I was originally born in Cleveland, Ohio, but my father was in the military. So I was raised partially in Ohio, partially in Oklahoma. And my father traveled a lot. So I don't know if it was because I've always been a pretty isolated kid. And you know me long enough. I'm a very private guy. I'm okay socializing with people. My life is very, very private. But that military upbringing gave me a lot of things that made me successful today. I didn't like it at the time, but discipline was a big one. My father was a very structured individual. And second place was first loser in his mind. That's not something I put on my kids, but to some extent, as much as I hated it, he always strived. Like second place was not enough when I know you can do better. Even if you don't make first place, I don't ever want you to stop striving for first place. So don't let second place be the limitation that you have for yourself. Like that's not good enough. So being brought up with a man who was not just a military man, but he was ex-special forces. He was an Army Ranger. He did things that I didn't know until my latter years, why he was so adamant about setting limits and expectations beyond the norm as a child, also contributed to my success. And I would like to say that I took his advice on everything, but like every other child, I heard it. But when you get to college, you start feeling yourself. You think you're growing a little bit, think you're smart enough. You make some not so wise decisions and you have to learn some of those lessons the hard way. I've heard this a lot. They say, oh, you think you always had it together, or you look like you've always had it together. You have the house, you have the car, your family's beautiful and doing well. No, that wasn't the case. I was a very smart kid, very much into my own mind, into my own world. And when I went to college, started having fun like most other kids. Took a different turn in life. Decided not to go to college.
That happens sometimes.
Yep, just started partying, having too much fun, and it's like I'm smart enough. I don't need this. Smart guy can make my own money. Man, I learned very painfully. There's some doors you just have to go through. Our society is not really set up unless you have a specific trade or you have family who can kind of open up doors for you. When you are from a regular working class family, you have to finishing that degree when you started something is just a necessity, right? And after beating my head up against the wall, I just finally said, you know what? I won't really admit my father was right at the time, but I decided to go back and take his advice. So went back to college and, tried to put myself back on the path that was established by my parents. But it's weird. It never felt like my path. Never. My desire in life was always to be an entrepreneur. I was always creative. I never really fit into the status quo. I knew what I wanted. I just didn't know how to get there. But since it seemed like I was failing in other parts of my life at the time and I wasn't sure which direction to go, I decided to give my father's path a chance. And it still isn't my path, but what it did do is facilitated doors that opened for me and opportunities that I would not have had if I had not gone back to college. So I did that, struggled through it for a while. And
well, my question is to you, you talked about your path.
Yeah.
Your path. Where did that path lead you and how do you make your money now?
So funny. I don't know how spiritual you are of a guy, but my father asked me when I was in 8th grade, we were driving by and he said, hey, my father and I didn't have a great relationship growing up. I think a lot of that was his very stark military personality with trying to be a father. And just out of the blue, he asked me one day, he said, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? We're driving in Oklahoma and I saw this open piece of land. And I said, I don't know what you call it, but I see a hotel, I see a restaurant, and I see like apartments. That's what I would like to build there. He said, oh, you want to be in real estate? I thought real estate was just about sales. And I was like, no, it's not really real estate, but okay, whatever you call it. He's like, buddy, you don't need to go to college for that and not waste my money. You can go to real estate school and get your education that way. And that was the first time having the idea to develop anything came to me. Once again, at that time, I didn't have a path forward. It wasn't until fast forwarding to let's say 2006, I was waiting tables here at Olive Garden, right there off 95. You probably remember it. It was right off of 95 and Palm Beach Lakes. Mm-hmm. And this woman walks into me and says, hey, you never smile. You always look unhappy. I said, no, I'm not unhappy. I'm focused. I finished school, right? I'm going on to all these typical college stuff. You're going on to all these interviews and people tell you to have this great resume, and I'm going to temp agencies and nothing is sticking because I don't have experience. And she said, well, have you ever thought about land development planning? It's like, I don't really know what that is, but tell me about it. She told me about it, and I didn't know you can get a degree in something called urban planning. To be honest, when she finished the conversation, I still wasn't interested. My degree's in business and finance, and I wanted to work for like a hedge fund or something and, be one of those guys that makes $3 million a year and sits on Palm Beach. But nonetheless, I recognized that sometimes you're pursuing something in life and what you're pursuing is not meant for you right now. And if you don't take the chance to switch directions, sometimes you'll continue beating your head against the wall. So she came to me about 6 months later and said, hey, I've been looking for you. Here's a card. I don't know if you're interested, but there's a guy that I know in HR for the county, and they're about to issue a job for interns for urban planning. She said, get in, learn what you can learn. If you're interested in it, it's your chance. I took her up on it, and a month later, I got hired as an intern. And that's how the road started to becoming who I am today. They have a rule when you work for the government as an intern, you have like up to 1,000 hours. They either have to hire you full time or they have to let you go. So about 2 months into it, I started going to the land planners who were already hired and said, look, you guys aren't going to review this project for 30 days. Give me the first week. If I make mistakes or whatever, just tell me what I did wrong, but I'll review all your stuff for you. So on Saturdays, I would go to Panera Bread from 8:30 till 12:30 every single Saturday, and I spend my weekends between 6:30 and 9 reviewing other people's plans. All I can take with me is what I have in my head. I can't control what people give me and what opportunities they give me, but I can control what opportunities I take. And so that was the catalyst for how I got hired permanently. And I took that same work ethic until I became the number one person in the department for reviewing everything. And when I left, the same land developers and consultants that I helped get through the government are the same ones who hired me, gave me my start. And I've just grown from there.
So you took off from then and there. You just went for it.
No. It didn't happen that fast. Nothing in this world does. So when I was with Palm Beach County, planning and zoning, reviewing these plans, I was also doing day trading, right? It's the government. They don't pay much, right? I'm at the bottom of the pecking order. I got a son on the way. I got student loans coming. This is real stuff. This is real life, right? So I was like, okay, I know I got a son coming in 8-9 months. What I'm making in the government ain't going to cut it. So I went to school for finance, and I was always good at seeing patterns. So I started teaching myself day trading while I was working for the government. And before I left that specific job doing planning and zoning, I made way more than any of the places I had invested my money before. So much so that I was probably almost hitting the same salary that I was getting in the government. And then I decided to leave there and take another job in the government. When I left that job is when people came to me and said, hey, I heard you were leaving and I can't deal with this government stuff anymore. You've helped us above and beyond when you didn't have to. Would you mind consulting for us? So while I was working for a different agency in the government, it's called Economic Sustainability, I was also consulting full-time in my own firm. So I essentially had 2 full-time jobs. Thank God for the internet, because most of the research and things can be done online if you know where to look. So I had 2 incomes until it got to the point where my contracts and projects started getting so large that working for the government was getting in the way. And then I finally cut out and just did it full time.
That's a good thing, right?
It is, but I'm telling you, that leap is scary, man. It is, because you have the naysayers, right? And I'm not saying naysayers like in that they intend to dissuade you, but all of us have been through something in life where you're trying to pursue something and nobody around you has done. And everybody came to me and was like, you have a kid now. What are you going to do for insurance? You're leaving stability. What happens if it doesn't work out? What happens if everything falls apart? And you got those voices in your head basically telling you not to take that chance. But where you're at is not providing the life that you want for your family either. So as a man, what do you do? I come from a very hard, long line of hardworking people, but none of them live the life that I wanted to provide to my family.
It's about the force. It's about that force that pulls you to go be greater, and that force of fear that pulls you back to stay where you are and to stay stagnant. But to actually stay on this line, why should people care who Aaron Taylor is?
I don't think they should. I think, I mean, if you, I'm a very direct guy. I don't think they should. I see people, when I go to the grocery store, I see tabloids all the time with people's lives and how they got to where they get. It's not Aaron Taylor I think people should be interested in. I think anybody who's gone from nothing to something has a story to tell. And I think people can be inspired and learn from those stories, either because they can relate to where you were at some point in time and it can inspire them to take that step, or sometimes they don't see a way out and they're like, okay, if this person made it, if they got through all of that stuff, then there's a chance I can too. So I don't think it's about trying to get people to know who Aaron Taylor is, and rather than seeing another person who wasn't, I mean, I played sports and I was very good, but I wasn't an NBA star. I wasn't a rapper. And yet I live a very good lifestyle and able to provide for my family because I use my brain. I drown out the noise of the internet. I drown out the noise of my family. I drowned out the noise of everybody who told me to, basically stay comfortable and just ride it out. And I think there's so many people that can relate to that. So hopefully they'll inspire them to change direction, take that chance.
So what is the name of your company and what is the size and scope of your company?
So the company's Arc Development Global. I've been an independent consultant for. I started the company in 2011, actually, while I was working for the government. I didn't really break off fully from the government until 2018 because the contracts were just getting too large. So my total project scope right now that I directly am under is 65 million. Um, it may be a little bit more than that. I don't know off the top of my head. Um, and that is mostly multifamily projects, church projects, affordable housing projects. Uh, I've done medical offices and things like that. And it's too much for one person to handle. So I'm used to doing everything myself because the few times I tried to rely on others, I found that either the standard of work was not up to par for what I expected, or people see dollar signs, but they don't understand what it takes to get there. And so therefore they fizzle out really quickly. So right now it's myself. I have a director of operations. I'm hiring another intern in about a week or two. But I hire all independent consultants because for 1099, for me, for taxable reasons, I don't have to worry about insurance and all that stuff. But I get all the same work done in less time without having the burden of an HR department.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what I hear you say there's a great book called Who Not How. And in that book, they talk about the importance of when you're trying to grow your business, it's important to find the right who's, because some people focus so much on how, but when you're trying to scale your business, and you don't have the right personnel, then they have the potential to hamper your growth. So is that is that what I'm hearing you say? Part of the challenge was finding the right who's to help you?
There are two challenges. I mean, there's the fear of you building up this baby, right? So you're very protective over it. And then, yes, bringing in the right people who not only understand the vision and have the right skills, but have the right work ethic, have the right character. Um, it is tough because everybody takes a position for their own reasons, right? I'm giving an opportunity, but that opportunity that I'm giving may not be as important to them as it is to me. So even if I can give them a path moving forward and say, hey, look, I'm trying to build up my sister and this intern and whoever else to be a VP in 2 years if I hit my goals. I'm trying to have everybody on my staff make six figures plus. I have consultants that have made more in a year than I have through my company. I'm trying to build people up, but when you don't have a roadmap and nobody ever told you how to do that, you're trying to figure it out on your own. And sometimes you bump your head along the way, but getting people who are as passionate about what you're trying to do, I think is the key. And that's very tough to do.
Okay. I want to read this quote to you really quick. Socrates said, by far, the greatest and most admirable form of wisdom is that needed to plan and beautify cities and human communities. So you've already touched on this, but I just want you to expound a little bit more. How did you decide to enter a field that literally allows for you to shape environments, cities, and communities, considering there are so few faces that look like yours in that space?
Honestly, I have to tell you, that wasn't a me thing. That was a God thing. I didn't recognize until I was working for the county doing what I do for someone else that the very thing that I had spoken into the atmosphere when my father asked me that question in 8th grade, that I was in exactly the place getting the skills necessary to do what I claimed that I wanted to do. I can't speak to the season of when I was going to do that fully, but I recognized that I was in a space gaining the skills and the knowledge necessary to do exactly what I told my father I wanted to. So I learned to just kind of rest in that, to be honest. And now I'm more purpose driven rather than dollar driven. What I did in Belglade, you're aware of the building that I had in Belglade. I knew going into it I wasn't going to make any money. I put personal money into that building to make it what it is because I wanted it to be a staple of the community. And I come from an area where the Black Wall Street was in Oklahoma, 1920s riots, things like that. You know about that. And it upset me that everywhere that you see poverty, everybody expects substandard everything, substandard housing, substandard education, substandard treatment. So living a purpose-driven life is a lot different than chasing dollars. And that's my focus.
I'm glad you actually touched on that. Currently, the American trend is that money defines success. For you personally, how do you define the success? What defines success for Aaron Taylor?
Knowing that whatever lines I've drawn in the sand in my life are uncompromisable for anyone. Money is no longer a factor. What is a bigger factor in my life is the peace that I can provide through me and through my faith to my family and those around me. Although I deal with a lot of stress and carry a lot of crosses, when I see the people around me doing well, when I see the people that came back to me later and said, you know what, I wish I hadn't told you to stick with the government. I'm glad you took that leap. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. It inspired them to change their lives. When I see that, then all the struggles I go through are worth it, because you realize you're starting to change generational cycles and generational thinking, generational mindsets. And now people are coming to me asking, I have this idea. Well, before they wouldn't do it. They're just happy making their little money and doing what they do. So for success for me has little to do with dollars at all. It can't buy the peace that I have. I live in over a 4,000 square foot house under air.
But
Right.
that make it feels good though.
When I walk in the house, it does, because I know where God took me from. It was just 16 years ago. I was waiting tables. May I get a drink for you? Running, getting bread for people, wiping tables. To go from that to walking into a house where I thought that was a little farther off for me. You know what I'm saying? And to see my daughter walking through a house that she gets tired walking through because it's just that big. You know what I'm saying? It's not the house, it's what it represents. I know how long it took me to get here. You know what I mean? So
I fully get it. Is Zig Ziglar, that quote. Money is not the greatest thing in the world, but it ranks right up there with air.
So
yeah, so that honestly, success has little to do with money. It's more about peace
It's more,
and what you
more
do
about
for other
peace.
people. And what you do for other people. If you can inspire other people to change their thinking, you don't know the ripple effect of the seed you planted in others. You know what I mean? When I had this building in Belglade, it was the first time they had an indoors tutoring for kids. Indoors tutoring. And just to see, as small as that is, it's all over the place here in Palm Beach. But to see the look on the parents' faces to bring their kids to a place that had tall ceilings, had nice floors, had AC, wasn't riddled with mold, and people who cared about their development. Some people came to me with tears in their eyes. I didn't make $1 off that building at all, to this day. But seeing that's success to me.
Hearing you say how you were able to contribute to a community such as Belglade, me being a son of that city, knowing the troubles that many endure in that city. I just got to be honest, man. It gave me chills hearing that you were able to contribute in that way. You had no responsibility there, but it was a duty. It was a duty of the heart, and I just got to tell you, that's commendable. It's certainly respectable and admirable. I don't think many people know how beleaguered the finances are and how crime ridden and drug and disease and all of that. So for you to go in as someone that has no real connection to that community, sir, I just personally want to thank you on behalf of the community.
No, anytime. You know what? There's one community. There's the American community, actually two. There's the American community and the Black community. If one suffers, we all suffer. So
That is true.
How can you be happy in your own success and not look back at the people who need to be educated and be brought up? To me, that's a failure. That's a failure.
Jim Collins wrote this book, From Good to Great, on how companies made the leap from good companies to great companies. How have you transitioned your business from good to great?
I haven't, to be honest with you. I'm in the process of doing that. Like I said, I'm a very private guy, and there are some things I think that God's been dealing with me on, as far as comfort is the enemy of progress. It really is. I'm comfortable making enough money to do what I do for my family and others. I'm comfortable not being in the limelight. I am not comfortable on camera, social media. This is a new thing for me. So stepping forward and expanding my voice, both in business, finance, faith, family is a big one, because I feel like too many brothers have abandoned that when they start making money and believe in the narrative of US's idea of success for men. I I'm in the process of doing that and trying to surround myself with the best minds to help me do so. I can think about the future of my company and do very well, even better than I expect. But when I get around other people who are worth several $100 million, their mindset is very different. And so I'm in a place of learning right now and execution with the people I've surrounded myself with. So I'm in process to answer your question.
So you said that your company hasn't quite made it to great.
Yeah.
Do you know what is missing to make it great?
What I'm doing now, to be honest with you, and getting an education, it's very difficult for us. Sometimes when you've been burned, right, by talking to people about your ideas and you have them take it and run with it. When you've brought people into your company that didn't treat it the way you thought they should have respected it, you're a little gun shy in talking about that. But I believe those are lessons so that you know who to keep close to you and who to keep at a distance, and also how to change your atmosphere and your environment and discern the people you should have near you. So it's an ongoing progress, because what I consider great for me is considered a stepping stone for somebody else. And those are the people that I'm trying to surround myself with. Right?
Do you consider yourself to be a great leader?
On my way.
On your way?
Yeah, no, and that's a good question. So I would define a good leader as somebody who's always evolving, right? We get very comfortable in the cesspool we're in, right? When I say comfortable, comfort is the enemy of progress. So somebody will look at me and say, "Oh, you come so far from where you are," right? But I could be good where I am, or I can continue to progress. And I think the goal of a good leader is to continue to develop the people around you. But in order to do that, you have to develop yourself, right? So to become a better husband, a better father, more involved, elevate your way of thinking, so that everybody around you continues to grow, separate from the dollars. Then that is the attributes of a good leader. And that is something I've only really taken seriously in the last few years, to like block time out to read certain things, watch interviews of people I believe are great leaders, and try to incorporate some of those attributes into my life. So
that's something I actually had the good pleasure of watching both of you try to employ in your lives. He's very much a proponent of that way of thinking and that form of self-discipline. My question to you is how do you balance the demands of continue to grow and evolve, running a business and heading your household all at the same time?
that is a tough question. I try not to focus on the entire goal, because honestly, it can be overwhelming. One of my constant prayers is, God, let me be better today than I was the day before. Let me be a better man, a better husband, a better father, better business person today than I was the day before. And I think if you're constantly evolving, it's like working out, right? If you work out every single day, you're not going to see the change every single day. If you do everything you're supposed to, diet, exercise, more water, less sugar, all of this stuff, today, between today and tomorrow, when you look in the mirror, you're not going to see a difference. But if you're consistent with the action over 6 months, a year, you're going to see some difference, whether it's your skin clearing up, whether your body's starting to change, whether you feel stronger, you're going to see something, right? So for me, that is the necessity, that I'm never going to be where I need to be. The consistency of trying to be a man of better character, trying to be a man of better wisdom, more knowledge, more understanding, stronger for my family, is tough. Sometimes, and I'm going to sit here and be honest with you, I don't get it right all the time. My wife is very clear to let me know that.
You do that, right?
I love you if you ever see this. She is a Jamaican woman, so if anybody has been married to one of those, you understand what I'm saying. They love hard, but they're hard women. But she lets me know, like, she told me, she said, Aaron, she said, one of the things I love about you, she said, you're so tunnel vision. Once you make up your mind to do something, nothing sways you. Mm-hmm. But she's like, you can't lose us in the process. And that actually that bothered me. I said, I'm doing this for all of us. I'm doing it. Like, we're breaking generational cycles. Our kids will never know what it's like to be poor. Like, we get to live a life that we didn't see for us right now. But it doesn't matter if you're never present. And so, like, I literally have to do that on a weekly basis. Like, all right, can I block out 2 hours of quality time The things I do try to do, I pray with my kids every single night before they go to bed. That is a guarantee. It's not a question. And if I haven't done it, they'll come and get me. Every Saturday, we go on a walk together, just intimate time. Friday nights is movie night. So I don't think it's about how much time you spend with your family, but the quality. And that's my focus in trying to do that more often, because I don't want to be the guy who's really successful on paper, but I have no relationship with my kids.
So you touched on the wife. And since you went there, I'm actually going to ask you this. So Harold Nicholson said, a good wife makes happiness. A bad one makes attitude. How has your wife shaped the culture within your family?
Wow, that's a tough one. Wow. I'd say first and foremost, one of my wife's biggest attributes, and this is at the top of my list for any relationship that I have, which is why I have very few friends. My circle is extremely small, and I don't apologize for that, nor do I care to expand it, to be honest with you. Loyalty and character is something that's rare to find in anyone. And despite the issues that my wife and I have had, that is one thing that is never in question. And the fact that no matter how mad she is, no matter what she's done or said, her loyalty is absolute. And to be in my position of where I'm going to have someone around me who is made a decision, no matter how much she has to argue with me, that she's here with me till the end, is a rare thing in this society.
So let me ask you this question. Because you mentioned you said the issues, and I think I heard it once or twice.
Yeah.
Have the issues gotten so far to where you almost thought about separating?
Oh, early on in our marriage, we almost got divorced once or twice. That's not even on the table now. But it took us going through that to take the I out of the equation. I think men who try to be the best they can be sometimes make a spiritual mistake of putting their wife ahead of God. If both people do exactly what they're supposed to do in their position, everything works fine. Even when there's a disconnect, your center, which you come back to, has nothing to do with each other. God is the center. And so, because if you ask me now how those issues got resolved, I couldn't tell you. All I can tell you is that there was a willingness on both of our sides not to walk away. I don't know her reasons. And to be honest, I didn't care. She decided to stay. Whatever reason she had is good enough for me. And when I look back over what could have been, I'm very thankful that my family's intact. So yeah, it got raw a couple times, man. Like real raw.
It was Kes McCorvey. I think it was Kes McCorvey that played with Florida State. He said something that always caught me, that I always talk about. And he said marriage is like a triangle. And he said the problem that a lot of marriages run into is a lot of times the couples will keep looking at each other and they keep butting heads. And he said, as long as you're staring at each other, you butt heads. But he said, when you turn your focus and start to focus to God,
naturally,
and now y'all begin to walk together and hold hands together, and now you move towards you start to move towards the goal and the calling of what God really called you to do. So he was telling, stop butting heads together and literally start to look up, hold hands, and you walk together. Yeah. And now your focus is focused on straight ahead and not her or not him. I think a lot of people miss that about marriage and life, because every time we turn around, we want to actually have a conversation about our wife or our husband constantly doing this or doing that, but that's not the target and that's not the goal. That's not the focus. Marriage is a duty for me. I love my wife, but I understand marriage is a duty. So I grab her hand, I say, let's walk forward. I'm not staring at her all the time. The biggest problem that we had inside our marriage is when I was looking at her. And when I stopped looking at her and started looking forward to what God called me to be, our marriage changed completely.
Yeah.
That's really good. You and I had a conversation a week or two ago, and you touched on your perspective and the importance of you understanding your kingship. And when I reflect on that conversation, it makes me consider, that right now there's a common conception that many men are becoming effeminate, right? Then you have the women that are leaning more into their masculine energy. So my question to you is do you have a more traditional or modern view about the role of a man and how he should handle his business and family? And what are your views on manhood, how that shows itself forth
Dude, to be honest, we definitely got to do another series on this one because I could go on for like 3 hours. um, no, I have I would say I have a traditional focus on it for two reasons. If you're going to make a different, if you're going to switch directions in life, you need to have a quantifiable reason as to why. So when people talk about like this whole modern society and modern dating and modern this and modern that and liberation, I was like, okay, what's the outcome? Right? What's the outcome of that life? More promiscuity, more girls on OnlyFans, more weak kids, more weak men. Most of the boys are fat. Most of them have no desire to play sports or try to be strong. Every Starbucks I go to, I don't know if the guy is gay or just a feminine. I don't know. Like, I don't see any examples in modern day society that says society is going in a direction where the family is even a factor at all. So when I look at where we've come from traditionally, when there were two people in the house, it is statistically proven that on all metrics across the board, the kids perform better. Academically, they're more balanced emotionally, spiritually, when families went to church. And the biggest catalyst of it was Sunday dinner, believe it or not. People just sitting at a table, drowning out the world, and just sitting together, having conversation.
But how does you as a man standing inside of your kingship influence and affect that? What does that look like?
It's not an option. That's why. There's some things that are up for discussion, and there's some things that, my wife, if she was here, she would tell you, there are some things that are not up for discussion, period. If I am operating the way I'm supposed to as a man, then I should give her that should lend to her a safe space to learn to yield to me in certain situations. The problem is that in the Black community, so many women have been abused, left, mistreated, that there is literally no example of what it is for a man to honor a woman when she gives the sacrifice of her submission. Right. And I remember saying that to her one time. We had gotten into it years ago, and I asked her to list any woman that she know in her entire lineage that can relate to the kind of relationship we have, although not perfect.
Hold on, man. You getting in front of me, man.
Oh, sorry.
You just hijacked my next question.
Well, okay, so let me just directly answer that then. The answer is, as a king, people understood that in order to become a king, first of all, you had to prove yourself. A lot of guys don't like that. You want the benefit of being called the king and being called the head of a household, but you don't want the responsibility. No, you don't get the benefit of having a woman who's gotten herself together to come alongside you and submit to you when you have no direction, when you have no vision, you have no discipline, you have no courage, you got no backbone, you got no strength, you have no education, and you're not trying to better yourself. What is she submitting to? A life of failure? If she's going to follow what God has told her to do and is to be your support, not your mother, but your support, it means you already have to be in progress of doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not worthy to have a woman like that. And a lot of guys don't want to hear that conversation. So
I talk about that all the time on our other show, Figuring It Out. Check us out on Thursdays at 8:15 p.m. Be there. But I talk about that all the time. A man must have a vision, purpose, and a plan. And then you have to have the ability to operate within inside those type of things. If not, no woman's going to follow you. Because what I found out with most women, they got to understand where you are going, because you can't lead them. That's what most people, even in business, if you can't actually properly describe to them the direction of the company or the business that you're trying to pursue, most people will not follow you.
Yeah.
And why do you think anything different of a woman? I don't care if you go overseas. I don't care if you stay inside the United States. It's always going to be the same thing. Can you supply them with the base level of life? And then what are your goals and what you're trying to do? It goes back to what I said about the triangle. If you're not looking forward, you're looking down and you're looking at her, and she don't want that. The late, great Kevin Samuel said one thing: pressure is meant for shoulders, not for hips.
Let's say that again.
He said pressure is meant for shoulders, not for hips.
Different kinds of pressure, but
I definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So studies show that the percentage of women willing to cheat have doubled in the past decade. Is cheating a absolute deal breaker for you?
100%. It's not even a question. My wife asked me, I don't know what she saw on TV, or a friend called her about a situation, and she asked me, she said, if this situation happened, how would you handle it? I said, I wouldn't even move my stuff out of this house. Unless it's a family heirloom or something I can't replace, I literally would not move a thing out of this house. Tell the kids what you want. We're done. No doubt, no conversation, no counseling. I don't want to know why you did it. I don't care. I'm out here every day and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but as a man in this time, I see very few of me out there that comes home every day, that is actually trying to do the best for his family, that does have a vision, that is making sacrifices to try to hold everybody together, to give everybody a greater vision for themselves, even if they don't want to follow mine. Loyal. Even when I'm upset, I massage your feet and your back. In the bedroom, we got no problem there. Trust and believe. I could call her right now, let you know. Like, and that's not even a question. But if you in a moment can look at everything that we've built together, me as your head, your children, your family, this beautiful house that we built together, and you think that this guy was worth throwing that all away, then you're not the person I thought you were anyway. We're done.
Studies also show that the longer a couple stay together, the sexual intimacy usually declines.
Mhm.
How do you and your wife manage to stay passionate about sex?
I would say verbally, she's definitely been the one that's more spoken about that. I think that's women's love language. They, if there's a problem, they always want to talk about it, right? For me, it's very different. Our love languages are different. I'm very physical. So you come to me as like, honey, it's been a while. I'm like, I got you. Let's do this, But for her, it's missing an intimacy. I'm more physical. She's more like, oh, well, it's not enough foreplay. We haven't been out on a date in a while. We haven't connected in a while. And men and women connect differently. So I would say it had to be more conscious for me, not because the desire is gone. I mean, I'm still really very much attracted to my wife. In fact, my biggest issue is that the kids have gotten in the way of our intimate time. That's really, I think, for people who have families, that's where the disconnect is, because kids are kind of in the middle. But
real quick, because I definitely want you to touch on that part. How do you all manage to find time outside the kids?
That's tough. We've been very blessed. So on my first two kids, and then this is why it's definitely a God thing. I literally prayed 3 months before my second son was born. Daycare is like $1,900, $2,000 a month back then for a newborn. My wife's a teacher at the time. Like, she might as well be like literally handing over a check to somebody else to take care of our kid. And I asked God, I was like, look, I don't have the money for this. What am I supposed to do? But if you're going to send somebody, I want you to send somebody that can see who my kids are to you, take a vested interest, and have an assignment over their life. So they not only just take care of them, but they invest in them. No kidding. 2 weeks before my son was 3 months old, a woman called me that I'd only met one time, and her whole circumstances had changed where she needed to have a separate job. She became my son's full-time caregiver until actually not this past January, the January before.
So you went and got a caregiver so that you can get you some.
No, I was going to try to get that anyway. The caregiver.
See, fellas, that's what high value men do. They go hire caregivers so that they can get them some. That's what my guy Aaron Taylor does, right?
No, what she facilitated wasn't whether I was going to get some. It was the quality of what I was going to get. Because instead of trying to like only get in 15 or 20 minutes, I can take my time. She was honestly though, this is not a joke. On her own, without me having to ask, she would call me on a Friday night and say, you know what, I was in prayer and God said how tired you and your wife are. She would just take the kids for the entire weekend and we would go to a hotel. No joke. Unannounced. She never asked for anything in return. She just come back so I can go to church. And so a lot of that intimacy time was facilitated because you talk about surrounding yourself by people. There was somebody who could see us. There was an older woman who'd been there before. She was married. She had kids. She understood. And she was also a praying woman. So when she started to feel that disconnect, she facilitated the bridge. But my wife is the one who's always like, Aaron, that tunnel vision thing you have doesn't work all the time. You gotta see me, like,
So both of you and your wife are educated. How did you get an educated Black female to get on board with your program? Trust your leadership and vision.
The educated Black woman.
No. It's actually, this is true. Do you know the divorce rates are higher among educated women than not? And the higher their education, the more likely and the sooner they're likely to ask for divorce than other women.
Yes.
And I'll that's a whole nother podcast we'll get into as to like the dynamics I've seen as to why that is. But here's what I would tell you. My wife is, do you know the difference between my family's part Native American? So we have several different tribes in us, but the reason why a Mustang was such a highly sought after horse is the only horse that can never be tamed. That's my wife. You cannot chill. You will kill the horse. You cannot break it. It's the only horse that cannot be broken. And that's her. What I realized is that their Mustangs, they were written, but it wasn't because you broke them. It was because you established a bond with them that was unbreakable. How you handle a Mustang is very different than how you handle other horses. So when you deal with a woman who is a force like my wife is, and most people look at her because she's, very demure, poised. She watches. People think she's very quiet. No. You'd rather fight with me than fight with her. Trust and believe that. But I had to give her the reason. The reason. I know in the past that this is typically what men have looked like to you, your friends, your all the women you know. I need you to recognize that I'm not that guy. I'm not the different. Even if you leave today, I'm still going to honor you because you're the mother of my children. I'm still going to love you. I don't care what you left for. If you have a problem, I got you. It took time to build that trust. And I think we're at that point now where, she's still an educated woman. She got questions. If I tell her I'm going to do something, like, okay, well, what does that look like? I need to see this, and this. And I sometimes have to remind her, I say, look, this is a spirit-led thing. I can't explain it to you. But my history thus far has proven that every time I've taken a direction, it has worked out for the best. Can you trust it? And she has. So that period, I think, for men who are also alphas and educated women, you have to show her, not because you're trying to force her to trust you, that you are the kind of character of a man that regardless of what you're doing in your direction, she can rely and be safe in that space with you. And eventually she'll come along. I think that's where a lot of guys get it wrong. Like, I'm an alpha, beat my chest. My wife, you're just going to get a fight. So that doesn't work.
So you are a proponent of education, and it's allowed you to position yourself to be in spaces that were once suggested that we didn't belong. One of the things I've come to know about you is that you operate with a certain definiteness of purpose, as Napoleon Hill called it in Outwitting the Devil. So my question to you is, how do you regulate your thinking to continue to grow and surpassing others' limiting belief that they would try to superimpose on you, cutting off the possibilities for your life and what you could realize?
Just so I can answer the question appropriately, can you give me an example of what you mean?
So people will oftentimes try to project because they can't see themselves as you see yourself, right? Then they'll try to, like you mentioned, the people told you to stay with the government, right? With the Department of Sustainability and and economic sustainability, or whatever the title was. When I first met you, that's where you were working. So how do you regulate that and keep those and oftentimes many of these people actually intend well, right?
They do.
They intend well, but they don't have the vision and they don't have the calling that you have. And so a lot of people will get off track. How is it that you manage to stay laser focused and not allow for yourself to become a drifter?
To be honest with you, and I had this conversation because it's not just people you work around, it's your family, right? I have family who had very good jobs. I had a family who did very well in corporate America. And so everybody gives you the best advice based on where they are. And it doesn't mean that they are equipped to advise you because their vision is their vision, right? The example I give to people, and one of my eyes is actually legally blinded when I let people know.
We have that in common.
If you're standing here and I tell you rain is coming, I call you on the cell phone. Hey man, you need to take cover. A huge storm is coming. I don't think so, man. I'm going to the beach. But I'm calling you from a mountain 5 miles away. Our reality is very different because what you see is clear skies. I'm standing on a higher plane. I'm able to see further than you. You have a choice. You can believe me or not believe me. But sometimes a lot of the people that are around you, when you're trying to climb that mountain, their feet are still on the ground. Your vision, your reality starts to change the moment you strive for more. The people down here can't see where you're going. They can't see what you see. So I've just learned to rely on what's in front of me and not what other people can see. And I had this conversation with my father. This is a guy who was like G.I. Joe back in the day. I didn't know until even the last couple of years. He doesn't have an entrepreneur mindset. He can't understand. He's proud of the pursuit, but he's not at that point where he can like really advise me. So I learned to start listening to myself more. I've had visions since I was a kid, and I'm going to pursue those visions. I don't care what other people have to say. If I fail, I fail. I get up and I'll learn it better. It's that simple. And my success rate has been higher because I've done that. My only upset is that it took me so long to do it. I'm in my 40s now. I wish I had done it 20 years ago, but better late than never.
Shout out to One Call Financial. We really do appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to use this space so that we can interview Mr. Aaron Taylor. Guys, come on out to One Call Financial. Let them help you to meet all of your financial needs. They offer a bevy of services, so come on out. Let them take care of your needs.
Back to you, Mr. Aaron Taylor. Have the Black churches and the Black leaders failed at building up their own people and communities?
Yes. Now, I say that with a hard yes, and I'm very convicted on that. I had that conversation with a few church members and pastors in Belgrade, actually. This is not to lump everybody in the category, because I'm an ordained minister myself. A lot of people don't know that. I've met lots of Black ministers who are out there making the real sacrifices, real community involved, doing everything they can. And I met the other ones that might as well be pimps in the pulpit. And I have a very serious problem with those people. I'll just be blunt about that. When I was in Belglade, a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of that land is owned by a family, one family, maybe two. And I called them to meet. I said, hey, look, I'm not from this community. I don't know this community, but this is what I'm planning to do. And I asked them very candidly, in a nice way, I said, why have the Black pastors here not done more? Some of these churches have been around for 50, 60, 70 years. The land was dirt cheap even back then. You know, why have you guys not bought more land? Why, when you're taking tithes and offerings, you're in the same building you've been in for 70 years? I don't have a problem with the pastor making money. A man should, especially if he's really doing the work of God and he's sacrificing his life, praying for the sick, doing what he's supposed to do. True pastors up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning praying for their congregants, real ones, right? But when I see the community still in poverty and I don't see people getting educated, and you are an educated man because you had to go to seminary school, or you went to law school, or you went somewhere else and you came back to the community, where did the sense of duty come to try to lift up your people? Giving them a pill to take on Sunday so they can feel good about the week is unacceptable in my mind. Because then if the word of God is change, a single measure of any word of God given to anyone is a catalyst for change in their life. How can you have this be in this community for 50 years? None. And there's several of you, and I don't see any change. It's a simple question, not holding any one of them accountable. My point is, you're in a place of influence and people listen to you. So how do you have the same mindset for 3 generations of poverty? How do you have the same pregnancy rates are getting worse? How do you have the same amount of guys having kids that they don't take care of and nobody's addressing that? And some of them are deacons in the pulpit. Really? Yeah, you failed.
Quick take here. Give me, if you were one of these leaders inside the community, like a pastor or a politician, what would be the one thing that you would do to actually impact the community?
Be honest.
Please do. That's what we hear, right?
Tell the truth. No, I'm saying that's
the answer.
Oh,
that's the answer.
Oh, all right.
Like, okay, so let's just unpack this. No person is perfect, right? Except Christ himself. So stop sitting in the pulpit trying to pretend like you're perfect and holding everyone else to accountable to standards that you don't follow, right? You're in a position to make a difference, period. Then God doesn't give everybody the same vision, but he does give you some. If you know that the people in your community aren't educated and you can't get the government to get involved, then why haven't you? It's really simple. Like, what actions have you taken beyond just, singing in the pulpit, getting people excited for a minute? Like, I send you forth into the world to minister the gospel of Christ because it's to evoke change. It's to raise the dead. People are spiritually dead. They're educationally dead. They have no wisdom. They have no direction. They have no vision. Yet you have people in the community who've been there 60, 70 years. Start by being honest with them. Start by being honest with them. And some of this is telling them things they don't want to hear, even at the sacrifice of you losing tithes and offerings. Period. I know that that's not a popular thing to do, to tell people, hey, look, you know what? You can't go to the strip club at night, make your money, and come here and praise God on Sunday, and that's okay. Like, no, it's not.
So What are your thoughts on the current state of Black America?
In a financial sense, I feel that America is still one of the greatest countries in the world where if you grow up poor, you can still become anything you desire. It facilitates opportunities that are not allowed in other parts of the world, where if you grow up poor, you're going to die poor. It's a caste system, right? But we're still mentally and spiritually poor. There was some show years ago called, what was it? Housewives of Atlanta, something like that. I couldn't even get through an episode of it because I saw people who were still ghetto. All they did was have more money, same behavior, same mindset, doing the exact same thing. And I was like, this is what you're telling Caucasian America who has no exposure to Black people, that this is the best that we have to offer.
So do you believe we're in a state of crisis?
I believe we've been in one for a long time, and social media glosses over it because we focus on clothes, cars, houses, but we don't focus about the things that the Black community should be upset about. I'll give you an example. You probably won't invite me back after this, but it's okay. The whole Black Lives Matter thing, hated that.
So did I.
Hated it. I understand the premise, but don't come to the entire United States talking about Black Lives Matter. And I haven't heard any one of you talk about the pregnancy rate in the Black community, the educational rate in the Black community. You are okay with your sons having kids and nobody holds them accountable to take care of them. No, take that somewhere else.
How can America solve these problems?
Two things. One, the moment you took God out of everything, you took out the highest standard of man, which we could try to adhere to, period. Now men have no direction on their God-given purpose, and real men don't hold other men accountable. I had a friend, I won't say his name, the guy I knew, who asked me one time. He said, "Hey man, I need you to get this hotel for me." I thought he lost his wallet or something. It's like, dude, I got no problem, whatever. Where are you going? He's like, "Meet me over here." I'm driving. I was like, "Wait a minute, let me just ask." I was like, "What do you need the hotel for?" Because he lives in the same city. He's like, "Oh, I got this lady, da 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 da." And I said, I laughed. I literally pulled over. I was on Palm Beach Lakes. I was like, "I can't help you." I knew he was married. Right? So the fact that most guys would have done that, I told him, I said, "Look, man, I love you today. It's your choice. But how is it that you have time for this? But I know for a fact you haven't been out with your wife in a long, your priorities are out of whack. You shouldn't even be here right now."
So, this is not a question to script it, but based on what you just said, the guy literally showed no remorse about not having any character whatsoever and tried to have you get involved and be complicit. Okay.
In his mess.
So, and this is a Black man, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question to you is Dr. Martin Luther King made a statement. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that he'd hoped that we'd have an America where people will be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin.
Right.
Would you agree that we've actually achieved that? And what many people of color are experiencing is a nation that's judging them by their character, and they're confusing it and faulting it on their color because they are devoid of character?
Yes and no. To be clear, I don't judge people because none of us are perfect. We've all fallen, right? He was convicted after I had the conversation with him and chose not to go that route. And I think that's what real friends are for. I don't know any guy, regardless of what you struggle with, there is a struggle, right? None of us are perfect. But if you don't have real men in your corner, they'd be like, "This is not in your best interest, my brother. I can't support you on this. Don't involve me." One. And if you do decide to do it, don't tell me about it because I'm gonna correct you on it, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have those uncomfortable conversations about like, "Look, dog, you need to go home."
Real men correct men. And I think that's one thing that we fostered inside our friend group is that we correct each other. And there's a saying that me and my home, the ones that's married, we have a saying to each other: "Don't tell me nothing that you don't want my wife to know." That does two things, right? That keeps me out of his mess. Basically.
To answer your question though, Charles, if you want to have an answer for something, you have to look at the problem with headship, right? So when you look and say, where's the barometer of moral compass come from? Well, the laws, right? Well, no, the law got it from the Bible first, 10 Commandments, right? That's what it was based on. Okay, well, that's how people conducted their lives before we became completely morally defunct, so to speak. If you want to correct it, you have to make it so unacceptable that society as a whole rejects them, both black and white. The problem is that the music industry today, that everybody's bouncing to, and I was guilty of it, reinforces the very ideas that we need to get away from. Mm-hmm. So you want to correct something? Start with the house.
So the presidential election is right around the corner. 80% of black people vote Democrats in any given election. How does voting impact the black community?
My wife won't like my answer on this one. And it's not an excuse, but I believe that everybody should vote because people died for that right. And I'm guilty to say that it's not something I took very seriously. However, I think like everything else this country tries to do and distracts us from the real problem, you're worrying about what the next president is going to do. Why don't you worry about what you can do in your own community right now? Stop relying on the government to fix your problems. That's when America became weak, when they started relying on the government to do everything. What are you going to do? I had a baby out of wedlock. What are you going to do? I got this drug problem. What are you going to do? I don't have this. No, what are you going to do? And if you start with your own home first, and how are you going to worry about international and national issues when you can't even get your life together?
I think the local elections are a lot more important than the national. I pull up to the voting block myself and might not vote for the president. And if I feel bad about both, I write in my name. I figure if you got two idiots, why not a third? I just throw my name on the ballot.
And you know what? I thought about that, but you know, the sad part is when it comes down to it, right? They say everybody has the right to vote, but let's be real. The people who really pull the strings aren't the people who sit in office that we see. The system was set up to let people believe they had a choice. They do. Like whether you vote for Biden or Trump, do you have any say so in their decisions?
Not at all.
So why are you really concerned about who's commander in chief when they're not voting in your interest anyway? I'm not saying don't vote. I'm saying be a thinker and ask yourself, if you're going to vote, have a purpose for what you're going to vote for, not black or I'm sorry, Democratic or Republican, because neither one of those parties get it right all the time.
No, neither one get it right 10% of the time. But I think the problem comes in is the pandering that we actually don't allow inside the black community. See, we deject all pandering from the Republican Party and we give our vote solely to the Democrat Party. So why should they pander to us? They don't have no need to pander. And I know people use that term inside a very negative way, but when you think about it, the Jews allow them to pander. If you look at the Hispanic community, everybody allows them to come pander to them. Thus, everybody fights and gives them resources. We don't allow that pander, so thus nobody fights to give us the resources that we need. Thus we stay inside the same state. I do think that the state do have some resolve in giving out the resources in order that we can better grow our community. But will they? No, because we don't allow pandering. Every time the Trump shoes just came out, and black people went on the internet and started talking bad about Trump because he's trying to pander to us. Well, isn't that what he should be doing? Isn't that's the basis of it? Should we lend ear to it when Ice-T was talking about doing the black bill? He went and they shunned him. Yeah, Ice-T. Yeah, it was Q tried to speak with him. And the black community shunned him for it. Like, why are you speaking with Trump? Well, that's what he should be doing. It should be open. It should be competitive. It shouldn't be closed off.
I think they did have a conversation. Isn't that where the platinum plan came from?
The platinum plan.
Yes,
that was.
You know, if I may, this is what I mean about the problems. You have the ignorant getting involved in things that they really don't have much, and there are emotionally charged rather than logic charged. You understand what I'm saying? There are some people, doesn't matter how much money the government can give to black people, they're going to complain no matter what. There's some black men that are going to be angry no matter how much progress we make. You just have those people. And every time these elections come up, I'm always wondering, you're so focused on trying to fight within your community on who should be, what's determined black, what's not determined black. If you vote for this party, you're not really black. You don't support this, you don't support that. In all of that fighting, what gets resolved? What gets answered for us? What resources come our way? And forget the resources. I'm gonna tell you right now, if I was a black president, don't come to me asking for a dime until I can see that you guys are actually making efforts to correct things in your own community. What I give you is an investment, not a handout.
Investment, that's the word.
It's an investment. I'm happy to give you everything that you ask for if you can show me that you're going to do something with the resources I'm giving you. If you're going to use the same mindset, people get happy over the 4,000 or whatever the government's going to give them when you're robbing us for billions in tax dollars.
So next question. Many Americans feel the rug has been pulled from under them with the housing costs rising to almost 60% of their income. Being in the development industry, where do you see the housing industry going for middle income America?
Horribly wrong. And I'm being honest about that. This is another reason why you've heard of Pavlov. Right?
Pavlov's dog.
He when it comes to classical conditioning and conditioning people to respond in a certain way, the government did the same thing for us. So for years, you got a government job, you were a teacher, you were this. The American dream was what? Get a house, raise your kids, retire, sell the house, hand the kids off and the house to the kids. Well, you have people still pursuing that dream when the dynamics of being able to achieve that dream is completely changed. So once again, we're now having to shift and starting to cry about it because we depended on somebody we shouldn't have depended on. Your ability to afford a home should never be solely focused on a single job. That's a handout, whether you like it or not. You're being paid for time, and somebody said to you, I think your time is only worth X. And we were conditioned to accept that. So we're back in the day, a guy might have had 2 or 3 trades. He was a farmer, he baled hay, he was a carpenter, his wife braided hair, watched kids. We got money any way we knew how to get it. Well, now you've conditioned us to just have a job. And when that job gets ripped out from under us, we don't know what to do. That was a fault on our side for relying on the government in the first place. The government is there to be an assistant, not a crutch. And we've gotten weaker because of it.
Being right now in construction and development, what are your thoughts on the social impact of gentrification on poor communities?
Ooh, this one will be the one my wife will probably go silent on me on for a while.
Do I need to recant that question?
No. Because I didn't for her either. I understand her point. She was Jamaican born, but she grew up in New York. And you have people like Trump or some of these other people come in these completely dilapidated areas, take it over, and the rents are too high for people they grew up there for 30 years, can't afford to live. I understand the problem. My perspective on the problem is very different now that I understand the reality of the numbers on this side and why costs are so high. Greed has a short-term memory, and the trickle effect always hits the people at the bottom, period. In order to develop, I'll give you an example. One of the projects I got approved, and we're actually going to change it to get a higher number of units. The citizens were asking, actually it's in Pahokee, going to be the biggest project ever built there, right in the center of downtown. They asked, well, what are the rents going to be? This is Pahokee. We can't afford these rents. And I said, we're 100% sensitive to that. And we're trying to make sure that the rents are just where it needs to be sustainable for the project. People don't understand there's you paying the rent, but in order for it not to become low income housing and look like another project, it takes upkeep. It takes money. It takes resources. And if you don't know what those numbers look like, it seems like a developer's trying to be greedy, even if they're given a handout. Because let's be honest, if you got $4 million to invest somewhere, you're going to put it where you can get your best return, right? You're not going to the hood to do that. If they're going to go to the hood, they got to have a really good reason to go there. And it's a big investment. It usually takes years for those developments to get off the ground. Years. So they're buying land, they're tying up resources, architectural, engineering, architecture, whatever. The millions that have to get pumped in the hope of being able to build that and rent it out, they're tying up money for years. So here's what I say. If you really want to stop people gentrifying your area, then you do it. You got enough churches taking enough tax money. Well, take them tithes and offerings. You got enough people taken from you in the community. Why can't you organize for the last 50 years? You got enough NFL athletes. We are the largest millionaires per capita in this country as Black people. So why aren't your own people investing in these areas at a scale necessary to make change? And we can do it. We have Black banks. We have Black billionaires. We have the flow of money is the same. Why aren't they coming and doing it?
Here's my issue. Here's my issue, and a little bit of I have some pushback on that.
No, please.
The Community Reinvestment Act is something that goes on inside Florida greatly. And me and my wife looked into that. And what they do is they give it to special builders to go inside those communities that have been run down, and they only give it to specific builders. And then they tell those builders, you have to now tear down this 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and the one next door and the one next door and build 3-story
apartments or whatever.
Apartment. And then you raise the rents and you have to keep it for at least 20 years or so. And then they kind of literally run everybody out of the neighborhood by doing that. I get where you're coming from. Why don't they step in and do that? That's great. Let's do that. But the problem is typically people of this don't get the opportunity to go in and do the redevelopment opportunity zones. So that's my issue with it is I'm totally with you. But when we do have you, do you get it?
No, I here's the thing. Like I said, I understand it from both sides, and this is a contentious issue among Blacks. Because here's the thing, even as not I'll give you an example, the Pokey Project, right? That was the first question they asked. I've looked at the numbers now on this side, not from the government side, issuing this money to people to develop. I've seen the numbers of what it takes for the project to get off the ground to be sustainable. The same project that was doable and sustainable 3 years ago before the pandemic now is 30% over budget because of interest rates and construction costs. Who's going to bridge that gap? And even if we can build it, right? Say you get the funding to build it and you even have a little government assistance. The rents have to be the rents in order for it to make it make sense. So a lot of times the problem is that you have people who've been renting in an area for 20, 30 years. Those rents are never going to be that for new construction again. So you only got two options, right? As a Black person who's sensitive to this, I look at it and say, there are tax dollars that go into education. There are things that can happen if money is spent. That's what stimulates a capitalist society. If no money's spent in an environment, so grandma got to keep her house, how much money she's spending that's going to go into education, go into roads, go into schools, go into, like, I get it. There's a history there. But what's the answer? The money doesn't come from nowhere. We have to find a way, a source where the community is like, all right, somebody's going to have to take this hit, or we're going to have to come together and recognize that in order for us to change and get tax dollars, get revenue, get construction, have Black-owned contractors building these, we have to know what those numbers look like, and we have to be willing to make that sacrifice. In the little building I have in Belgrade, I can tell you from experience, people they touted me when I built that building. They were so happy. We're so glad people are doing something here in Belgrade. 3 to 4 months later, you say, you know how much support I was getting? Very little. People get excited for a second when change is coming. But if you ask them to dig in their pockets and spend more money on helping the community than fried chicken, all of a sudden people say they don't have it. That's a mindset that has to shift. You spend money on expensive shoes, you got an iPhone, you got all of this stuff making Jeff Bezos rich at $200 million. Why is Amazon going to Belgrade? You have local businesses there, 2-day shipping. So you're spending your disposable money. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy it, but if you really want to change the community, you got to make a sacrifice too. Like, you can't just expect people to write blank checks and you're not willing to feel some of that pain.
Yeah, but it's really hard to grab hold of vision when you're cleaving to victim. And that's been a perpetual cycle in the community such as the Glades. And I think it makes it really challenging to go out there and affect change. I think that there are many people that have a great heart and a great mind. But I think that if they're not careful, what you will ultimately end up doing is fueling self-disappointment, because many of those people are unwilling to do it any differently. So we don't want to, we don't want to go in there and gentrify the communities and drive the price up. But like, these people have had these communities for how long and done absolutely nothing with it to improve the condition of those communities. So, I don't want to get into a rant on it, but that's just kind of some of my feelings. But I want to throw this one at you really quickly. You've shown so much resoluteness. Is that innate for you, or is it something that you developed over time? Where did you learn to impose self-discipline?
I had it in some places and not others throughout my entire life. I would not say that I was the most disciplined guy when it came to anything, really. I was the guy in school that made C's and B's because my parents told me that as long as I got a 3.0, I could have my privileges. So if that was the mark, then that's exactly what I did. I didn't push myself to do anything more. And it frustrated my mom and my teachers because they all told me, you're the smartest kid in our class. Why can't you just put forth the effort? I was like, okay, 2 extra hours of studying and I still get the same. I don't see the benefit. Like just young and slow. Like I didn't see what that extra work was going to get me in the moment. You know what I mean? At that time, I was more interested in building. I was designing my own rockets and airplanes. That's what I wanted to be originally, with an aeronautical engineer and design rockets and airplanes. And I was more interested in that. So whatever the threshold was, my parents said, you get this, I'm not going to take this away. Soon as I crossed that line, my work was done. So discipline for me was very selective. It was on things I had a passion for. So I was into martial arts really big. I trained in that literally 6 days a week. My father can tell you about that. I was passionate about learning about money in the stock market. I spent all my time on that. Anything outside of that, it's taken some effort. Now as a father, I'm disciplined because I want to give that example to my children. So my children are the ones that are the kind of the catalyst for somebody's looking at me now. I want them to have that growing up, and I didn't. So I'm kind of forced to live a disciplined lifestyle.
30% of men on the age 30 have reported as being a virgin or having no sex within the last 12 months time period. Also, 7.2 million men have dropped out of the workforce and are refusing to participate in society. Do you think we have a manning up crisis, or do you think we have a societal, or has our society actually forgot about men?
Wow. That goes back to the taking God out of everything and having a standard of what a man is. You can't expect men to be men when there's no example of what that is. You can't expect them to have a standard for themselves when the standard is usually established for them growing up. Any child's idea of morality and ethics or right or wrong comes from their first influence, which is home, right? Well, if men are out of the home, mothers are working 2 or 3 jobs to try to put food on the table, TV and society dictate their norms. And TV and society says, do everything to avoid pain, do everything to avoid discomfort, do everything to, be wrapped up in your feelings, and whatever you're feeling is legitimate. No, screw all that. Being a man has to do with respect, honor, and duty. Your feelings ain't got nothing to do with it. And to be honest with you, like I'll give you an example. People think I'm really hard on my sons. He gets migraines sometimes. He woke up and I could tell he was in pain. He's like, Dad, I don't feel well. And I said, I love you, buddy, but I got to tell you something. I don't care. I'm not telling you I don't care because I don't care that you have a headache. I said, buddy, we're men. Society's not going to care. You think I feel well every time I got to go to work? I said, rub some water on your face, have a little bit of tea, take a minute. And I sent him to school anyway. He came home, asked if he felt better. He said, Dad, it was a rough day. Like, I didn't feel good. But halfway through the day, I started feeling better. I said, if I let you stop, then your mental limitation was that you could not go to school. No, you feel pain until you collapse. That's your limit. So I'm going to force you to do it because one day you're going to be a husband and a father like me, and your wife and your kids need food and protection, whether you feel like it or not, whether you have a headache or not, doesn't matter. And I said, as a father who loves you, I cannot allow you to be wrapped up in what you feel. That being missed, that should not be the exception. That should be the norm in the house. So if you're asking me where we failed as a society, it's men not being present to hold their sons to that standard.
What would be your advice to young men entering into today's society?
Okay. Find a man who already has the characteristics, principle, and success that you seek to have.
That's good.
And make him your mentor, you make him your correction, make him your focus. Because a guy who's already been through the rigor to get there is the only person who can help you get through it, to get, he's been there. and humble yourself, because a guy who's already made those sacrifices doesn't have time for foolishness. He doesn't have time. If he makes the sacrifice to invest in you with his time to be a mentor, understand that is a big ask. And he's not going to waste it on somebody who's going to be wrapped up in their feelings or be concerned about social media or his girlfriend. Even he might even tell you, like, look, she's not the one. If this is really what you want to do, you want to be here, you make a decision. And I don't have time to wait. Like, take 30 days, do what you got to do. If you want to be with her, be with her. But to be here, she doesn't have the characteristics of the kind of wife you need. And that's a hard thing. So put yourself around people who are going to make you uncomfortable. That would be my example. I mean, my answer.
That was really good, actually. So the last question from me is, when a Black person begins to have good success, many within the Black community feel as though that person should do something to help or give back to the Black community. Do you feel that you owe it to the Black community to give your time, expertise, and resources to try to improve the condition of the Black community? And how do you give back to the Black community?
Yes and no. Like I said, on that building, I did. It wasn't. I haven't made a dollar on a cent. It was about doing something in the community. But what I made a decision this year. I think as a community, it's a blessing that we are more community and family focused. It also limits us because we're so busy dividing what little that we have every time we step up that we can never really make life change for ourselves. We're too busy trying to bring people up sometimes who have the same mindset that they've always had, and they really don't want to do the work to change. They're just happy where they are. I find that a lot of the Black community is the same way. Not all. So if you're asking me if I have a responsibility, yes, I do. I will give my time and I will educate anybody who's willing to put in the work. If you're not, don't come talk to me. My time is valuable. And if you really want to change your life and the community's life, I'm here for you. But if you just are coming to me like, well, what is the government going to do for us? And what do you think I should do? And you're looking at TikTok 90% of your day, you really don't want to change. You just don't want to be in your circumstances anymore. And I'm not here to enable you. Change is hard. Change comes at a sacrifice, man. And I made sacrifices that still make me shudder sometimes today, but it was worth it in the end. And I had to make those sacrifices alone. So if I see that grit in somebody else, that young brother, that young girl who's like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm not going to live here anymore. I'm going to make it. I got you. Come along.
So then I would ask, should the obligation be a heart obligation? And the reason why I ask the question, because I think if it's not truly in your heart, then you won't give your full energy and your full commitment to whatever that project or whatever that process is. So I think that we kind of burden, other people of color because they've begun to accrue success or financial, financial fluidity, and we begin to kind of ask them to carry the weight and burden of us not being willing to pay the price. But I think that because of the rigors and demands of trying to help people to grade 8, I think that it would necessarily be a heart issue and not just an obligation because you're of the same color.
I well said. I agree with that.
Last question. Wrap it up. When the casket closes, your time on this earth is done, and all of the weeping is over. What do you want to be remembered by and known for?
A man who wouldn't compromise. Whatever standards I have that the rest of the world does not agree with, before God and man, I would not compromise. I believe if you stand for anything in life, you're going to make enemies and trigger somebody. Even among my wife, like there are things that she believes I'm a little too hard on my sons about. And I respect my wife's opinion. I do listen to her. I try to discern sometimes when I should back off, but I'm also raising men that I expect to be stronger and better than me. And even at the sacrifice of having issues in my house, I won't back down from that. I won't back down from my daughter teaching her value, regardless of what the rest of the world says. I don't care what people tell me that I can and can't speak because I have a business and the rainbow community is going to come after me. I don't care. My standards are my standards, and I will not bend down from that for anybody. Anybody in my life who's going to be lost is because I stand on certain principles, mean they weren't meant to be there in the first place. So I would like the people to know that when my classic closes, that the few people that I loved hard. I worked the best I could to provide for myself and those around me. And when I had excess, even those that I did not know. And I did my best to be a righteous man, even though I didn't always get it right. So.
That's good. CB Smith, last words?
You know, I've known you now for a very long time. And right now, this is the favorite version of Aaron that I've ever seen, because when he asked that question, I saw you lean into vulnerability.
That's the truth, man. It is the truth. I mean, everything you do culminates in that moment, and how God views you and what you've done with the life in that moment and how it impacts others is all that matters. So that's a touching question for me, because you have to think about the legacy that you leave behind. And we're held accountable to that, whether it's good or bad. So that is, I don't fear much in life, but that is a big one for me. It really is.
Last words.
Wow. Regardless of where you are in life, don't be comfortable. Whether you're in the darkness or whether you're in the lights, today is never good enough. Those around you that truly care for you will want to see you do well, even if they can't be in your life. And never separate yourself from God, because it is Him that gave you purpose, gave you the power to get wealth, and gave you divine purpose and direction. So stay focused on that. Stay focused on yourself. Learn to drown out the noise of the world. If you have a family, make sure that everything that you pursue in life has a purpose, not just for yourself, but for those around you. That's it.
This is Mr. Life, CB Smith, and we are signing off with our first guest, Mr. Aaron Taylor, and we'll see you for the next episode.